Hey, this is Joycey.
And Blake.
And welcome to
Savagely Scaled.
Yeah. All right, in this part 2 of our time with the wonderful Amanda Simmons, we are going to deep dive a little bit further into nutrition, some things to be looking at, and also how do you become a nutrition client with Amanda? Because trust me, once you do, you will never go back and you will never see food the same way. All good things, though. All good things.
Yes, all good things.
So let's go into it in...
Perfect.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, so we're back with Amanda, and we're going to go more into detail of what macros are and what her nutrition coaching entails. All right, so what's the first, when you say macros, what are macros?
Macros, there's 3 macros. They are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Basically just the 3 things that make up the calories in your food.
Okay. And when you start somebody on their nutrition journey with you, do you automatically just put them on all 3 and just be like, here you go? What is
I would say I hardly ever do that unless they've already been tracking their macros before and have been doing it for a long time and are really good at it. And I know that they have been tracking them and that they know what they're doing. But no, I don't usually. And when I first started coaching, I pretty much always gave everyone macros right when they started. And then I was like, maybe we don't need to do that. Because that's what happened to me. And I did okay with it. But again, there's just a lot more to it. And to just give someone goals and say, hey, hit these right now is really, really hard. So
do you usually start them with just hitting their carbs or hitting 2 of them or 1?
So again, like we talked about on our last podcast, it always depends with what someone's doing. So with my clients, typically before we even start, they have to fill out a questionnaire with me that talks about their goals.
Yeah.
Right. And that means are their goals weight loss? Are their goals to get stronger? Do they have a really specific goal? Are they trying to compete in something? Do they have a performance goal? Is there an event coming up that they want to look good for or a competition coming up? Are they just trying to eat healthier? So we kind of go over their goals. They're supposed to give me a basic idea of what their nutrition looks like right now. I'm going to be honest. I love my clients, but I think a lot of them, when they give me an idea of what their nutrition looks like for the day, they're giving me what their nutrition looks like on a really good day. I'm like, is this really what you eat every day? Because if so, why are you here?
Yeah. They're just oh my gosh. I feel like the biggest thing, they think that you're going to judge them.
Right.
Right. And
so it's really funny when there's this little spot on the questionnaire that says, what does a typical day of nutrition look like for you? Right.
Yeah.
And it usually goes one way or the other. Someone will be terrible. I eat out all day. I drink 3 sodas. I need help.
You're I can work with that.
Yes. And I'm okay. Or it's oh, breakfast is usually some eggs and some oatmeal and berries, and lunch is a chicken and salad. And then dinner is a protein and a vegetable and a carb.
Oh, wow.
And
so you already have everything figured out.
Cool. That's really how it goes. But anyways, okay. So if you're doing a questionnaire, just be honest. You can say that's what my day looks like. But then after I eat dinner, I go crazy because I'm so hungry and I eat 3 tubs of ice cream.
Yeah, because you're here to help more than hinder or judge.
Yes.
And how we said on the last episode of the nutrition is when we had those potlucks and people are hey, I'm she's not going to look at your plate and be hey, why do you have that stuff on?
I'm not walking around judging everyone's nutrition.
And I'm you guys realize most of these desserts she made and she would like you to eat them. So, and
I'm
yes,
also a foodie.
Yes. And I'm and I'm usually eating 10 of those cookies. And I usually tell her hey, remember we had that potluck. It's a free day for Blake.
Yeah. So we have a questionnaire. We talk about what your nutrition looks like for a day right now. We've talked about, there's a spot in there where you tell me if there's anything you've done in the past that's worked well for you nutrition wise. So I can kind of have an idea of that. And that kind of goes one way or the other too. A lot of people will be like, I did this and it worked really well for me and I love it and I just need some accountability for it. Or it will be like, I did this and it worked for me, but it was really, really restrictive and I hated it. And those are like the two answers I usually get, which, yeah, that makes sense. You either did something in the past that worked well and you're having a hard time keeping up with it, or you did some because you just need someone to kind of hold you accountable, or you did something in the past that was like impossible to keep up with.
Yeah.
Because it was too strict.
Do they put in there like, oh, I did keto?
A lot of people do, or they'll say, I did Weight Watchers at some point, or I've worked with another coach before and tracked my macros, or I did this at one point, or one time I juiced and I lost a bunch of weight, but like I never could keep it off after that.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that are on my questionnaire. Obviously, I need some kind of information about you before we start, So I get that questionnaire and usually set someone up for their first week of working with me.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people get bummed out because pretty much now most of my clients, the first week, I tell them, I just need you to track your food for me and like your thoughts and feelings each day. And that's not exciting to them because I didn't give them any like goal, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I thought you were going to give me like, tell me to eat 1,200 calories a day and I was going to lose like 3 pounds this week.
It's like we have baby steps to get into it.
So baby steps, nutrition coaching, there's a lot of baby steps. So the first week I'll just tell them, track your food, give me some information because it's really hard for me to help you when I don't really know what's going on. And be as honest as you can because it's very easy. I'm saying this from experience. It's very easy for me to unhonestly track my food.
Yeah, it is. It's very easy to just be like, oh, okay, well, this adds up to it. So
I like to track what I want to track. And if I don't want to track it, but I ate it, sometimes I won't, which does nobody any good. So I tell them, just be honest. If you really ate a bunch of something, put it in there and see what it looks like. A lot of times it's not as bad as you think it is. Sometimes maybe it's worse than you think it is. But either way, you're not going to learn or grow or get better if you're not being honest. So that's kind of, some people I just have do that for the first week. Sometimes we have to do that for a few weeks, right? Sometimes we have to get comfortable with tracking and being honest with tracking our food for a few weeks. That way I can look through their food logs. I can see what kind of calories they're eating, what kind of food choices they're making, and really go from there. And as far as where we go after that, it just depends on where that person is.
Yeah. Do you start to see like their habits mentally with their tracking?
So I try and get my clients to make some notes daily to know how they're feeling each day with their tracking.
Which I'm horrible at.
But even if they're not doing that, they have a weekly formal check-in with me that's online. And they should be kind of telling me those things, so I can gather some more information from them. Like, hey, I had a really hard day this day. And I might go look at their food logs and they might have overate that day or severely underate that day, depending on how their feelings are. And once we get kind of comfortable with logging our food, we start working on building balanced meals.
Okay.
Because I think no matter what your goal is, whether it's to gain weight, lose weight, perform better, you have to have balanced meals.
Yeah.
Right? That it's just, why not? So from that point, I will often give someone just a protein goal to start with.
Okay.
And a lot of times it will be a little bit lower than I really want their end protein goal because I always want to give them something doable first because that they might still have to work harder for, but that they can do because I don't want to give them something so unattainable that they give up.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking like that as their coach is what I'm giving them something they have to work for, but that's also doable. And you have to kind of get to know someone to know what that is. But I think that's really important.
I know sometimes though, when like some of the newer ones are like, oh yeah, I have to hit like 120 on my protein. And I'm like, that's super easy. They're like, you
Right.
hit your protein? And I was like, yeah. And I go, and there's some weeks that I don't even have to have my protein in my coffee. I can hit it. And I'm like, it's carbs that suck for Blake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and once you've learned how to eat enough protein,
Yeah,
it gets way easier.
it is.
But so many people undereat protein and don't know how to do that. Everyone I get is undereating, is eating very little protein.
And I'm like,
you know?
that helps your body heal so much. It helps your muscles. It helps, like, it's so amazing for your body to have.
Yes. And when you're eating more protein, your eating habits kind of generally just improve overall.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of naturally happens. So I would say for a lot of my clients, they probably get sick of it, but that's the first thing we start focusing on is let's get our protein in line. The carbs and the fats, they're easier. The other stuff's easier. Let's tackle the hard thing first and get really good at it and go from there.
Do you give, like, examples? Like, if they're like, hey, I only know of chicken and it's just something like I don't like having chicken or warming up chicken, do you give them ever, like, examples of other foods that have higher protein or things that they can add?
Of course. I don't give out actual meal plans. And I have a lot of thoughts on that. I don't think they're good or bad. But I personally don't do it. So I want someone to kind of figure out how they want to eat and what they want to eat on their own, which can be hard because I'm kind of making you like learn how to eat. But I like to give them some direction, right? I mean, obviously we all know proteins in like meat and eggs, but there's like sneaky ways to get little amounts of protein and to supplement with it. And so I'm always looking through their food logs and saying, hey, you know, what if you mixed some plain egg whites in with your whole eggs in the morning? Because plain egg whites, fun fact, are nothing but protein. There's no fat and there's no carbs in them. Easy way to really just sneak some extra protein into your breakfast, you know. So I'll look through their food logs and try and find specific to them ways to get more protein instead of just saying eat egg whites.
Yeah, I think
because,
yeah, I don't like that. And I think you gave me that example like years ago. And then also like what is it, yogurt. So I'm not a big yogurt fan, but I think you also were like you did yogurt and dip mix or yogurt and something else. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And I actually love that more than anything. Like whenever I make like a crema or anything, I'm using my yogurt instead of sour cream.
Yeah.
My family looks at me sideways and I'm like, yeah, I made the dip. And they're like, that's in a yogurt thing. And I was like, it's really good.
Sometimes you have to not tell people.
Yes.
Because if they don't know, they don't
They
know.
don't know. My mom's like a sour cream snob, but usually I've started putting it in a regular container, like a glass container.
Yeah.
And she will, but like the rest of the family's like, this is really good dip. And I'm like, yeah, and that's yogurt. But I love those ideas. Like it was never like, oh, you know what, Blake, I make this, so you should just make that.
Right.
You have given me those ideas when I'm like, hey, the crock pot thing, is there any crock pot meal that you really, really like? But with your little tidbits, like if you gave me ingredients or like a meal, I'm like, okay, but what can I add that Blake might like? Like you've never demanded what you eat on me.
Right.
Which is I like that educational wise for me to learn how to feed myself.
Yeah. And that's why when people track their food, I can kind of see how they like to eat and what they like to eat instead of just taking the way I like to eat, because not everyone's going to want to eat what I want to eat. And I feel like I am very aware of that. And so I almost like don't even like sharing my food sometimes because I'm like, oh, people are going to think this is gross. So I do try and accommodate people for their needs. And I will never replace my sour cream, like just as sour cream on like a taco or something with Greek yogurt.
Yeah.
But for like recipes that call for it, because I like the taste of sour cream on my like taco salads. But to replace it in a recipe is great. It works great. Cottage cheese is like a super popular thing right now too. You can blend it and do the same thing with it.
Yeah, I usually put it in with my eggs and my egg whites, and I love how it tastes.
So again, every time I post my food, someone will be like, you should use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. And I'm like, no. So that lets me know that other people don't always think the way that I think too. And you need to think about that. So yeah, someone might want to use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, or they might not, but they might want to use it in a recipe and change things up, and we'll never even know the difference.
Yeah. So like, do you find with macros that you can create more of a balance for your clients or for yourself?
So obviously not all my clients track their macros, but most of them do. And I don't want to say that tracking your macros is the only way to do things, but I do feel like it's a really easy way for people to be successful, to give them the flexibility and learn how to eat balanced and find that the balance where they're not so restricted and they're choosing how to use their budget each day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You get to choose how to spend your budget. Sometimes you might spend it more wisely than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might blow it on something, but just know you have to like pay for that later.
Yeah.
So for me, it works really well for me. I know it doesn't work perfect for everyone, but for most people, tracking their macros and finding a way to balance out their meals and still have some like fun stuff in there works pretty well for them, as far as like still being able to hit their fitness goals and whatnot.
Okay. So do you see it more with like the athletes that you have compared to like, I don't want to call them average, but like the everyday person hitting macros?
I really think that it could benefit anybody. But if you're moving, knowing how much protein to have if you're lifting weights, regardless of what level of athlete you are, if you're a beginner or you're advanced, if you're lifting some weights, eating enough protein and getting enough carbs to fuel yourself to move is beneficial. And obviously your nutrition looks different for what level of athlete you are, but it's like the same concept, right?
Okay.
Fueling your body for moving.
Yeah.
No matter what level that is. It's important. So,
and I know I just did a segue for athletes, but for like your everyday person who kind of like maybe walks, doesn't really do aggressive movements or anything like that, do you just stick with the one like protein, and how long does that, or is that like maybe a forever thing, or do we welcome the other?
Yeah, it depends. So I almost always set a protein goal for someone, whether it's really low or really high, just to give them like a baseline for something to work on. Because if you don't have something specific to work on, I think you just kind of slowly fall away and lose those things. So, and I have all kinds of different clients. I have clients who are like trying to compete in CrossFit, and I have clients who just are like, they saw their friend's daughter post about me, and so they came to work with me. So maybe we don't focus so much on tracking all of their macros. A lot of times we'll still track food just to make sure, one, that we're like eating all of our meals for the day, but also just choosing things that work well for our body, whether that be less processed foods, or maybe it even means like making sure they're having a treat every day, because if they don't, they get really restrictive and then it like spirals them out of control later. So it might just be, we're looking at like, what are your meals consisting of? Not necessarily carb and fat wise, but what foods are you choosing? What foods are you choosing? They making you feel good. Yeah. Things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens, because we went into the last episode of, you have this 3-month thing. So in the 3 months, do you do like an evaluation with them, or do they just do their last check-in, and do you like hit those high points or like those low points, or hit any like, okay, what's concerning you, and then what's the next step?
Yes. So the thing is before I like to go into anything really specific with a client, I try really hard to make sure that they've built up good habits, like overall. Like, are they looking at their meals and making sure they're getting carbs and fats and protein in each meal? Are they getting enough protein each day? Are they timing their meals out properly, that they're feeling good all throughout the day? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they drinking enough water? So I think a lot of times when we get to the end of the 3 months, we're maybe just getting to where we've built up those good habits, you know? And so I tell them, I like to tell my clients when they first start, we have to work on building healthy habits before we're going to jump into me saying, like, here's your calorie goal for weight loss. Let's go hard for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So they all kind of know that maybe the quicker they get those habits dialed in, the quicker we'll start working. But also then life happens, right? And stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, shoot, this week was terrible. We got to start over. So it really just depends on where someone is in their life, maybe how quick they can pick up those habits before we start working on anything specific. But I try and make it very clear when we start that, like, that's the number one goal to start with, you know, like we have to, it's really, really hard to say, hey, let's do a 12-week fat loss phase if you don't already know how to build well-balanced meals and get plenty of protein and sleep enough at night and go for a walk every day.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying a lot of times it takes more than 3 months, because if you did want to do a 12-week fat loss phase, unless you're already like way on it, I'm probably not starting you on day one on fat loss macros.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know if you can't do that well, you're just going to struggle and not be successful. And I need to set people up for success.
Yeah. And I feel like that 3 months is like the beginning steps to setting yourself up for success, because you have to, you know, as we've reiterated several times, track. And that's very, very hard for a lot of people to track everything. And making recipes, that was like, even when I started years ago, like making the recipe and understanding how to do serving sizes and proportionate everything. Right. It was very like eye-opening, and it takes time.
It takes time.
Right?
The more you do it, the easier it gets. But when you first start, things take a lot more time.
Yeah. And there's like some weeks where I'm like, okay, it's just me and the kids, so I have to get something quick.
Yeah.
So then I go through my recipes. But if we didn't build that in the first 3 months, or even like maybe touch on that, you're going to need more time to really understand what works best for you. What food do you like? Because I'm more of like, I really, really have to enjoy my recipes.
Yeah.
Like if I cook something on Sunday and I eat it on Monday and it completely just destroys my happiness of eating, I'm not going to eat it.
And the whole week's just like, bleh.
Yeah. And then I'm like, great, I set myself up. And then I go into this like black hole and everything. And then by the time I write Amanda on Wednesday, I'm in this black spiral of craziness of everything's just crashing down on me. And I think like the first couple times that I wrote to you, because like we didn't really, really know each other.
Right.
It was like very like, I still had that like, oh, I hope like I never felt like you were going to judge me meanly, but never like maybe look at second take of some of the stuff that comes out of me.
You were like scared to disappoint me, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just very like, I think more like scared to disappoint and be like, oh, Blake's also not always this happy person.
Right.
Which actually like in our friendship, I take that like, that you accept that I'm not always that happy person. It's just like for you to set everybody up for success that 3 month, and then you also have to go into that therapy session with everybody.
Right.
So I feel like, yeah, they would need more than 3 months to fully understand, if you have never ever done this before, to be happy with yourself and to really grow from it.
And you can learn a lot in 3 months, but you maybe can't tackle super specific goals in 3 months. You can maybe learn how you're going to tackle them, but I would just be doing a disservice to someone if I didn't actually teach them how to do the things that made all of this easier before trying to do something really hard.
Yeah.
And doing fat loss phases are hard. It's not easy.
No.
And you don't want to just be in a constant state of fat loss. And I have to teach people that too. They just think like, oh, I'm going to lose weight for years, all the time. I'm going to constantly be losing weight. That's hard on your body. And when we do nutrition coaching, we usually segment things up between like weight loss, performance, maintenance. You know, there's so much more to it than just weight loss. And you have to kind of learn to see what the big picture looks like too.
Do you get people like with maintenance? I feel like that's also like when we tell people to scale. Do you feel like they're like, wait, what do you mean I have to be in maintenance? Do you ever get like that second?
It's hard because maintaining is so not sexy and not exciting. And I get that. I know that. Maintaining feels good. It's easy to do. And it's really like should be the bulk of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't think like that. And because it's not exciting, it makes it harder for me to convince people that like maintaining your weight while going to CrossFit and still keeping your good habits and learning how to keep good habits regardless of what's going on in life is still a really big, important goal and thing to accomplish. But maintenance doesn't look like you're accomplishing anything in people's minds sometimes. So it's hard. I have to convince people of that.
Yeah.
You know? And I have to convince myself of that.
Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest thing that we forget that you're human, Amanda. You're like the bionic woman that keeps going and does everything.
Yeah. I'm perfect.
Yes.
I don't have meltdowns ever while food prepping.
There's just so much that goes on with nutrition and food prepping.
There is. And, you know, not to discourage anyone, it's hard. All of this stuff is hard. But is what you're getting out of it worth it for you?
Yeah.
And I think it is, you know, but it's hard to see that in the moment sometimes. So
I feel like we want that gratification right away.
Right.
And I feel like with everything on the internet, everything on our phones, everything is just right then and there.
We're used to getting instant gratification now. And so we expect it.
Yeah. So with like food prepping, do you welcome that in the first 3 months or 6 months? Or do you find like a way when you're like, oh, they finally are starting to get it, let me walk them through it?
So no matter what kind of goals my client might have, most people, unless you're literally staying at home all the time and cooking a fresh meal for every meal, you will benefit from some kind of food prep. Even if you're cooking a fresh meal at home, you'll benefit from some kind of food prep. So I don't want to tell anyone like you have to food prep, because the way I food prep is very specific and most people aren't food prepping the way I do. But I encourage most of my clients to find what level of food prep that they need to do to set themselves up for success. And I would say like 90% of the time, my clients will come to me and be like, you're totally right. The food prepping helps so much. So I encourage that with almost all my clients. I let them know there's different levels of this. It might just mean you're washing and cutting up your produce for the week, and that's it, and having your ingredients in the front of your fridge. That might mean all it is. It might mean you're making your whole entire meals for the whole entire day, putting them in containers and having them ready to go. It might mean you're just cooking extra dinner every other night to have lunch to take the next day. But I try to get my clients kind of started with that right away too, probably after the first week, just because I think it's a good habit to get into and it makes everything easier. It's kind of one of the first habits we probably start like working on building.
Yeah, I never knew of like or looked at it as levels.
Yeah. Well, that's because, so I post a lot of my food prep on the internet.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Because I literally cook out like all my meals.
Yeah.
Weigh them out. I literally just grab my containers out of the fridge. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So I have to tell them, you don't have to do that the way I have to do that. I have to do that because I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to grab it and go. You can bulk prep lots of things and throw together a meal real quick every morning, you know? So again, it always depends. It depends
Yeah.
on how much time you have and where you're going every day and what you're doing. And if it's not something that you can do and enjoy your food throughout the week and work for you, then it's never going to work. So
Mhm.
yes, there are very different levels of food prepping.
Yeah, I just never looked at it that way, and maybe that's where my mind needs to relax and think of
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, because sometimes doing it the way I do it makes it like less enjoyable throughout the week. Like it's like, ugh, I'm just grabbing the same thing every single day.
Yeah, because I've gotten a lot of people who are like, well, I don't like reheated food
Yeah.
and I don't like the same thing every
Yeah.
day. And I'm like, well, I just found recipes that I enjoy and like I will try them out. And there are those weeks I'm like, man, I shouldn't have
That
tried
wasn't
that
that
out.
great.
Yeah, I go, you will have those weeks. But then I start to shuffle my meals around. I mean, my egg bake is pretty standard. I might
Yeah.
add some things in
Yeah.
it. But like my lunches or my dinners or whatever I'm doing, I shuffle them around. Or like what we've been working on with me is actually enjoying dinners, which does help my family. Then it's
Yeah.
a healthier dinner that I have to cook or my husband has to cook.
Right.
And we're all having the same meal and I'm fitting it into my day.
Yeah.
But I just never looked at like, oh, like having your produce at the front of your fridge to just pick.
To cook for your meal, like right there. Like if
Yeah.
you're cooking at home. Because even if you're cooking at home, if you're going to go make a meal and you're like, oh, I need to pull out 18 vegetables and wash them
Yeah.
and chop them, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go grab something. But you have time to cook at home. So maybe like your food prep is just having stuff readily available to cook instead of actually cooking it ahead of time.
Like usually for Thanksgiving and Christmas I do that. But like
Yeah.
now I'm thinking like maybe I should, like my brain
Oh my
is
gosh, did we
completely
just
like
learn
breaking.
something?
Yeah. Because I'm like, I didn't even think of that.
But that's what I think of when I see people all the time and they're coming to me and saying like, I can't do what you're doing. And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
let's find something for you to do that you can do that works well for you, that you enjoy. That's what this is all about. This is finding something that might not be something you totally love. Because if we did whatever we loved, I mean, I would eat a lot of cake from
Yeah.
Costco. But
I'd be at Cold Stone every day.
finding something that you are okay with, that makes you feel good, that you can do over and over and over, and you're not miserable doing it, even if you're working hard. So
Yeah.
it's just always finding what works for every single person. We're all just so different. So
I also find like there's some recipes that like truly make me happy
Yeah.
eating.
yeah,
Like, yeah, it's never truly make me happy making unless I'm making cookies.
Right.
But like eating
Mhm.
and just be like, oh my gosh, it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm starving, I can't wait to eat. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to eat this.
And so as a coach, I think I also try and teach people, like, again, they come to me for coaching and they think they're just learning like how to eat protein and carbs and fat, but we're also learning how to find recipes that we like. We're learning how to go on the internet and look up recipes that we might like and find how to tweak them to make them better so that we like them more, and finding recipes that reheat well. Not everything,
Not everything
all meal
reheats
prep
well.
is not created equally.
Yeah.
And you have to experiment with that. That takes time.
I think you
But-
need to make a shirt that says that.
But once you
not all
not all meal prep is created equal.
equal.
Not everything reheats the same. Not everything holds up the same.
Mhm.
And people don't know that. And how would they know that? And if they try just one thing and it doesn't turn out well, then they might just be like, ugh, meal prepping's gross.
Yeah.
So we have to try again. And I always tell people, all my clients are going to listen to this and be like, Amanda says that all the time. But I'm like, you have to have like a toolbox. You have to have like a
Mhm.
box of recipes. You can't just have one thing you like and eat it all the time. You can have one thing you like that you cook more often, but you need to have other things that you know will work well for you. You can like reach for when you need that,
Yeah.
and know that you're going to enjoy it all week. Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to be successful. And then you're just going to be sad or disappointed with yourself. And that's depressing.
Yeah, I feel like people are like, oh, I just have to eat chicken and broccoli or
Yeah.
chicken and a vegetable. And I'm like, no, it's so much more than that because you can add like seasoning, you can add your other things. You can eat ground turkey, you can eat ground beef, I was like, I do things differently to get more bang for my buck and things.
Right.
And I was like, I tell people all the time, I am not a Amanda nutrition. Like, your nutrition is just like so like precision, like for you. And I was like, she makes meals,
or it looks like it anyways.
but you make
Sometimes.
meals that are for you.
Right.
And I make meals that are for me.
Right.
And I feel like that's why I stuck with macros, because I could make meals just looking at number wise.
Right.
Because like I just knew like protein is really good for my body with healing things, with anything like that. But it was also like you telling me like, hey, like these are better options for you, or try this, because you can also tell like with us writing to you, like we're in a rut.
Right.
And there's times when I'm like, well, I didn't even think that I was in a food rut, but she's right, I am. Or like, hey, did you ever think about like maybe doing more of your step goals? Or are you really drinking your water? Like, did you say that you are, but did you pay attention to that you were drinking your water?
Right.
Like, I feel like we're in the center of a circle, and you as the nutrition coach, you're like connecting all of the dots for us to be like, oh, that did affect my nutrition, or that did affect my water intake, or I didn't realize me not going for my walk did affect that. I was like, oh, I don't need to eat that today. And I'd already logged it, but it wasn't big.
There's so many pieces to the puzzle that people don't even think about.
Yeah.
And getting them all to work together well can be really, really hard. And so, I mean, that's why people hire nutrition coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in your toolbox as a nutrition coach, like you have to pull out different things when people like plateau, or when they have that big, huge drop, or all of a sudden they have like a big, huge gain, up and down?
Sometimes nutrition coaching is really, really hard, because stuff happens all the time with people. Sometimes I have to like open a check-in and read it and really just think about it all day.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes
Sometimes I sit back at the end of the day and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. But sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, I did a really good job with that. And occasionally I have a lot of nutrition coaching friends. And if something really stumps me, sometimes I'll be like, hey, can I ask you about this? Like, what do you think about this? Sometimes I have to like bounce some things off my husband and get some ideas, or just think about it myself. So obviously I try and listen to a lot of podcasts on nutrition and read a lot of stuff and watch a lot of other coaches and see how they handle different situations to learn how to handle situations myself, because there's different stuff coming up for different people all the time. And I know that the way I do things myself as a person and as a nutrition client isn't going to be the way everyone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And I also think that sometimes people maybe think that I'm going to expect everyone to do things the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, because what I do might not work for everyone. Obviously, a lot of the things I do work well and might work really well for someone else, but I know that that's not always going to be the case. So you have to be very open-minded.
Yeah. But like whenever I've done check-ins with you, like you hit, and I can just give you like 5 sentences, and you've hit like home on things that I was like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what I needed to hear today. I feel like you and your husband have made me cry more times than anybody else in my life. Good cries of like, there's been times of like, I like needs to get her shit together, or I do need to relax more on myself. I do need to make time for myself. All things that I feel like you as a nutrition coach, I've never read a feedback and been like, I didn't get anything out of that. She didn't listen to anything that I said. I feel more of like you steer me or push me in the right direction to get myself back on track. More than I've been on any other nutrition journey. with a coach or by myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and there's times when I've told you, like, hey, if you need a spot, just let me know. And even though I tell you that, I'm like, I really hope she doesn't let me go. But I know I can text her.
Right.
Because, as your friend, I also want you to get everything out of your nutrition and
Right.
grow and do the best thing for you. But there's still like this umbilical cord that I still need you, because I do. And people that I've talked to are like, yeah, like she hits on those points, whether we want to hear them or not, but they're always said with kindness. They're never said with shame. And it's just like, it always builds me up.
I think a lot of that comes from experience, from like the longer you do it. Also, I feel like, I'm not saying this to like brag on myself or anything, but I feel like being a nutrition coach, I've done a lot of work to learn how to really like look at someone and question why they are the way they are, why they make the choices they make, why they act the way they act, and understand that. So you have to be able to put yourself like in someone's shoes, even if you don't understand it or if you don't like it or anything. I'm always like thinking, why is this person acting like this? Why are they this way? And being able to do that helps me to coach people a lot, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying not to cry
Are you
because of
crying?
everything.
But really, and I think Chris has taught me that a lot, because he's very much like that, and watching him be like that. I know he looks like he doesn't have a lot of emotions and stuff, but watching my husband be able to put himself in someone's shoes, someone he totally doesn't understand their feelings and doesn't think the way they do, but like understand why they do that, is really, really important when you're working with someone and trying to help them be better at something.
It really is. Like, you both like, yeah, like I'm
Blake's
not crying.
She said I make her cry a lot, so.
I don't know, like, both of you. And I know, like, there's always that stigma because, like, I hold both of you up very high. And I feel like anybody that I want to learn from or help me with tools, I hold up to like a standard.
Yeah.
And I don't like to disappoint and things like that. But the way that you guys have, like when I did programming with him, nutrition with you, like anytime that I'm like, hey, I had a really, really rough day and this is what it is. And I've never felt like you were going to put me into like a box or just be like, you know what, like you could have just done better on your nutrition. You truly are like, hey, like we're all have those weeks, but you know, next week will be better and we can just do this. Or even during my injuries, like there's so many times when we would have our little talks and I'd be like, I just don't want to be here because everybody can move and I can't. And everybody's happy and I'm not happy. And you'd be like, yes, it sucks. But you know, it's just sucking today. Tomorrow might not suck.
And having, I also, if you're doing anything like this, you have to kind of step away from that all or nothing mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And as a coach, sometimes you have to remind people of that. Like, this isn't all or nothing. Like, this thing you did this week was still really good, even though it was not a great week. But, you know, stepping away from that all or nothing thinking is really important in anything you're doing with your goals. Some weeks you really might be like 90% in.
Yeah.
But some weeks, you know, that are bad, you don't have to be 0% in. You can still be like whatever percent you can give that week. It's important to be able to do that. And it's important for your coach to be able to recognize that and point it out for you so that moving forward, you can do that on your own too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
That was deep.
Yeah. So with that, we've also got
Macros.
The macro talk is very, very deep into things. Because I feel like with your nutrition, you do go into the macros, and the beginners are different from like the people who've always hit their macros.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were reiterating of like how much of a mental attack it is with food prep, with understanding what macros are. And I feel like you just hit it all around and you can specifically do it individually for each person, because my macros don't look like yours. They don't look like Carol's. They don't look like Joyce's. And with that, with your nutrition, how you can dial that in individually and hit those. Is there any time like when you set a goal for somebody and you see it and you're like, oh, okay, let's tweak it a little bit? Or maybe this is not the goal we should hit first.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I will tell people like, hey, I worked really hard to set these macros for you that I think will work really well for you. They might not. We might try them for a few weeks and they might not be what you need. I'm taking an educated guess. There's no way to know like the perfect macro formula for everybody. Obviously, we're using science. We're using me learning about you a little bit before I set that and deciding what I think works best for you. But I try and be really open with everyone. Like, this isn't some magic number. Let's try it for a few weeks. Let's see how it goes. And if we have to adjust it, we will adjust it, and sometimes maybe what I guessed for them might be wrong. Maybe it was too hard for them. Maybe it was not enough food for them. Maybe it was too much food for them. I'm not perfect. I'm always very open with my clients that, hey, this is what I set for you. This is what I think is going to work, but let's find out.
And with that, so we've said the notes, but when they do the actual check-in, is there like a rubric? Is there something that tells them like, hey, these are the key points that I want you to write? Because I remember like first writing to you and I was like, I don't know what to do. But then you told me.
So my check-ins, like when I check in with my coach, I have specific questions to answer, which is kind of nice. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like there's nowhere for me to just like talk about what's going on for my week. When people check in with me, there's no specific questions. It's just like a space and you tell me what's going on. There's a little list of some like example questions that you can be answering. What I typically look for from a client in a check-in for most people is, how did your week go? How, what's that? There's like a 1 to 10 on your consistency.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of you telling me like, I either really stuck well to this or I didn't. Because obviously if you didn't, we're not going to change anything because we don't even know if you're doing what I had set for you. What went well for you? What didn't go well for you? Because what went well for you, if you tell me that, I can say like, oh, hey, great, let's keep up with that. What didn't go well for you? Maybe we can find ways to change it or to fix it. Some people don't even use the little notes section. They just write like in the notes app in their iPhone, like every day.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, like if you told me on Monday I felt so good, on Tuesday I felt so good, on Wednesday I felt like trash, I'm going to look in your food logs and be like, well, let's kind of look at this and see what we thought about it. What you give me is really up to you, and how much you give me is up to you as a client. The more you give me, the easier it is for me to like know what's going on. So I get that's kind of hard. I think some people, a lot of times, if they sit down and just think about their week and start talking about it, typing it, it kind of just ends up flowing and being what I need to hear. So I think a lot of people, I try and tell them like, please, when you do your check-in, like sit down and like have time to really think and give yourself like 10 minutes to do that and not be distracted and think about how your week went. And that way I can give you feedback on it. So
is there anything like pictures, measurements?
Yes. So my clients all have a formal weekly check-in with me. I do remote coaching, so it's all online. They, it's not required, but there's the option to update their measurements, their weight, and their photos every week. It's a front photo, a back photo, and 2 side photos. People hate taking their photos, but I love them because I get to look at them each week and compare them and really see the changes in them. Because there's so many ways to measure progress, and so many people just think the scale's the only way to measure progress. And I'm an outsider looking in and looking at progress in so many different ways. So they typically update those things with me and then give me like a brief or not brief description of how their week went. So when I go to open a check-in from a client, I'm looking at photos, their weight, measurements, what they wrote me, if they made any notes, In the app, they can track their hydration and if they ate out or drank alcohol each day. So I can see that in their check-in. And I also can see their food logs. So I can look through each day and see what they logged for their food, what they ate, and how it like correlates to how they're feeling or how they're doing.
Yeah. Is there any like apps that help with that tracking, or is it just built into that
So
one app?
my nutrition coaching syncs with 2 different tracking apps. It syncs with MyFitnessPal and it syncs with Macros First. Is that what it is? Macros First, which is what Blake uses. So people can use either of those and they just track their food in that app and it syncs and it lets me look at their food logs and makes it really easy for all of us to track our food and for me to see your food.
Yeah, I was with MyFitnessPal until that whole paying, and then you found the loophole, but by the time I got the loophole, I was already head deep in Macro First.
I think it's nice that we have 2 options. So I've been told it's very complicated to get a software to sync with another app.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of technology going into making that happen, which is probably why there's only 2 options instead of all the options. And there's a lot of work going into having 2 options. But that way people can kind of pick what they like. I've been using MyFitnessPal for like 10 years and I'm just so used to it and it's easy for me. So I like it, but I like that there's an option for other people. A lot of people love the Macros First app.
Now that I'm used to it, I really like it.
And having that other option when they don't like the MyFitnessPal. So yes, there are options. And someone might not want to track their food in a food tracking app at all. That kind of hinders both of us, I think.
Yeah.
They can always tell me what they're eating throughout the day and keep like a little bit of a journal of that. Or we can just have some kind of like blueprint of what their meals are supposed to look like. Are you having a protein and a carb and a vegetable or whatever, a starch at each meal, and some fats. And we can go off of that. People don't get as many results from that, but it's an option. There's always options. You don't have to track your food, but you still have to give me some kind of feedback and information for me to give you feedback back.
Yeah.
So
we have the 3-month, and then they continue on, and we talked about like then what the process is of your weekly check-ins. Do you do like a 6-month review, a 1 year if they've been with you? Is there any like other like in person? Because you do a lot of remote. Is there like a chance for us to be like, hey, I want to meet in person? I know that you recently started.
Yeah, if I have my time is so all over the place. If I have a client that's local and they want to meet up in person, especially when they're first starting, usually after like if they've started with me and been working with me a few weeks and I don't know them really well, but they live in the same town as me, I like to meet with them in person because really them being comfortable with me and like kind of knowing my personality helps. Same with me with them. But also sometimes if they're very new to it, me kind of showing them some stuff like how to use the macro tracking app and showing them some tips and tricks and kind of talking to them in person can be a little bit easier. I feel like I personally become like this magical person behind a screen. Like it's way easier for me to convey my feelings that way, but I know not everyone's like that.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with meeting up in person if they need to, but also like if someone lives on the other side of the country, I can still work with them and do everything remote. And occasionally I'll get on a phone call with someone who wants to sign up and talk with them on the phone for a little bit about their goals first.
I hate talking on the phone.
I do too, but if someone needs that and wants that,
you will.
I will do that for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well for me and I wouldn't personally want that, but I know other people do. So I offer that. As far as like check-ins, I don't have anything formal set up. Usually if people have been working with me for a long time, they kind of have an idea of what things look like and that we kind of go through phases. And I try to periodically check in with them like, hey, do you want to change things up? Do you have new goals? I have to be careful when I ask that because sometimes when you ask someone if they have goals, it just really like kills them.
I think when you asked me, I was like, shoot, should I have a goal?
And you don't always have to have that, but I try and check in with people regularly because if they didn't tell me and I didn't know they needed to do something, sometimes they're scared to say something.
Yeah.
I try and check in and say, hey, do we need to change something? Do you have different goals? Has anything changed?
Yeah.
just if they haven't really told me. So that's just on a like client to client basis, you know. It just depends on what we're doing, where we're going, how things are going.
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
usually me too. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did you know? Like, or I tell so many people things, so I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell that person that. Okay, or like, I mean, we know with my injury, I just went into like a really dark place, and I was like, I don't have any goals in my life for never,
right?
Never. I'm just here existing.
Which it's okay to feel like that sometimes, and sometimes I just have to let people feel their feelings, you know. But then I have to like pull them back. There was a time though when, you know, with your back too, and I was like, yes, she feels similar. I am so excited that I get to talk to somebody who feels like me. Right. And being able to experience all those things, not that I wish that upon anyone, but me being able to experience those things and know what they feel like. Because, you know, a lot of people think like, even when they hire someone as a coach, like, oh, they've never been in my shoes, you know? So, and you don't have to be in those shoes to be a good coach, but me being able to experience those things kind of makes me humble, you know? And I also like to use that opportunity to like walk the walk and talk the talk. Like I'm not just always telling my clients when they're injured, like, think about the things you can do and not the things you can't. Because I always say that, but I am literally doing that myself and showing them that and showing up and doing that. And I think that's important too.
It is. It helped me because it was like, well, I can ride a bike or I can walk, and I just have to add that more. I think that's when we started upping my walking until my little ankle issue, which is actually better with my
always
orthopedics.
Something.
Yes.
All downhill after your 30s, guys.
Nobody tells you that. Like
I will tell you.
Yeah. I was like, 30 I heard was the best, and I'm breaking down real quick. Yeah.
But also with that comes a lot of like wisdom, right? We were talking about this outside of our podcast, that as we get older, like we just learn how to handle those situations better. So
it does. You do have some wisdom. And I think like with like me being injured, like helping others. And there's times when I look straight at them and I'm like, do not be like me. I'm trying to help you.
Right.
You do not want to be like, oh, finally could do a sit up and it's been a year. Do you? No, you don't. My last question would be, what are the 3 things that for somebody to be like, okay, I can start my nutrition, or ask about nutrition? What are the 3 things that they should like be open about or have? Or
number 1.
Yes.
It's going to take longer than you think. And so you need to be prepared to be in this for the long run. Because even if you hit your goals, even if you have weight loss goals and you hit your goals, you have to continue working hard to maintain those goals. And we can't forget about that. And that's why I have to teach you those good habits. Because if you lose the weight and you feel great and you're doing amazing, cool. But did I set you up to go out on your own and keep up what you did and stay that way and keep being happy about it? So this is like a time investment.
Yeah.
It's also a money investment because eating healthy is expensive. Paying for a coach is expensive. But it's a different kind of investment. People are investing in other things that aren't giving them a big payoff. But anyways, tangent. So first thing is, it's a commitment. It's a long commitment, and you need to be like buckled up and ready for the ride. The second thing I would say is, it's really important to not have an all or nothing mindset, which we kind of talked about, because people are so like 0 to 100. They're either all in or they're all out. And being all out obviously gets you to where you need my help in the first place. Yeah. But being all in might lead to burnout and isn't sustainable. So you have to be kind of open-minded and willing to. Some people are like, well, I'm only good if I'm 100% in. And if I can't be 100%, I can't do it. You have to learn to step away from that. You have to. You can't be 100% all the time. So that's my second thing is being open to finding that balance, and not so much to where you find so much balance that you're not being successful. Yeah. This isn't like a 50-50 balance. It's like an 80-20. So that's my second thing. 3. So being open-minded about the process. So knowing that there's not like a set like map out that's going to look exactly the way it is. And that's hard because of social media, I think.
So hard.
There's so many people out there doing things different ways, and something might work for someone and might not work for you. And you see these things and you think it's the only way. And also, though, even what you learn that works for you might change later. So you might be doing something that works really well for you, and that's great. And in 6 months, you might not want to do it that way anymore, and you might need to change that way. So you have to really learn to adapt and pivot when you need to. And that's why I think having a coach on your side is helpful, because I can be like, hey, listen, let's switch gears. Let's do this. Let's try this. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe you need to give it more time. So yes, being open-minded, which kind of everything we just said means being open-minded.
Yeah. But it's also like having you, because I don't have to worry about myself. Like, making the food prep, doing all that, but I have you to give me the blueprints of what I need to do for that week, which is awesome. So, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm ready for the investment, and I'm open-minded about what this journey is. How do I reach out to you?
I feel like my Instagram is kind of set up for like, hey, I'm a nutrition coach. Come follow along on my life and see what I'm doing, and I'm here to help you. So my Instagram is Amanda_May. I am at Kingman CrossFit all the time. If you're a member here, if you live in Kingman, you can find me here. I am on Facebook. I do share a lot of my own journey on Instagram. That's kind of what it's for. I also share a lot of my personal life too. So don't come there if you're not ready for learning about my weirdness as well. But yes, I am taking clients right now. If maybe you're listening to this and you're like, hey, that really sounds like someone I want to work with. I love working with all kinds of different people. I love meeting people. I love learning about people. And so all my coaching's remote. I can work with anyone, anywhere.
Awesome. So her information, her Instagram, as she said, it will also be in our show notes. So your show notes will be, when you see a little brief overview, you're going to click more, and then we'll have all that information. But let's reiterate, just in case, and I'll snag it. So they can find you on Instagram at
Amanda_May, MAE.
And what's your email?
My email is amandasimmonsx@gmail.com. That is my nutrition coaching email. Don't spam me.
Don't spam her. And again, you can find her on, do we have a little tab on our Kingman CrossFit?
Yes, if you go to the Kingman CrossFit website, you will see me. You will see a bio on there about me and kind of like who I am. And you can also contact us through that for nutrition coaching. But honestly, your best bet is really to reach out to me on Instagram, to send me a DM. My DMs are open. A lot of people message me stuff.
And I feel like that your Instagram is very open to what kind of person you are. And it's the biggest thing is like whether you can jive with that person or not.
Absolutely. I'm not for everybody. I get that. But if you think I am for you, I'd love to work with you. I love working with different kinds of people, all different kinds of different people.
So the biggest thing is like, guys, just jump in and see about like getting a little consult, whether it's a 10-minute one or another one where you're actually talking with her about what your options are, and she can give you all of the pricing info and everything with that. Just reach out to her and see if she can answer any questions that you may have, because I know nutrition is very scary for some people.
Hopefully listening to this makes you a little less scared.
Yeah, and we're going to do a couple other segments of maybe like when we do holidays, what a holiday looks like with nutrition and all kinds of other things. And we're going to have her back on this, and we should have Joycey with us.
Yes, we miss you, Joycey.
Yes. If not, Amanda's going to be my other co-host that I'm going to be taking abroad with me.
Step in co-host.
Yes.
Backup co-host.
So have a great day, guys, and can't wait to talk to you later. Again, we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we will be seeing Amanda in different segments. So look out for those ones. A big thank you to you guys for always listening, always sharing. Thank you guys so much. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be doing this. So yes, thank you. Our music is from SoundCloud and Upbeats. Our findings are from Amanda, of course. So again, if you want any more information regarding nutrition, I highly recommend reaching out to her and just asking a couple questions and seeing if you guys are a perfect fit. And with that being said, remember, don't be a Karen, be a Sharon. Thank you guys so much. Love you and can't wait to see you guys again. Really do miss Joycey. We'll see her on future episodes. Of course, she's the other half of Savagely Scaled. And until we meet at the whiteboard again, bye.